I'm joined now by Texas State Representative James Talarico. James, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So, you guys, you and a group of 50 other Texas legislators have fled the state, broken quorum. You are now in Chicago, Illinois, to prevent these Texas Republicans from moving forward with their plan to advance this rigged new map. First and foremost, how long are you prepared to be in Chicago? I mean, I know that Republicans are going to leave this session open as long as humanly possible to extract as much pain as they can from you guys. So are you prepared to stay there for weeks or months? I mean, what are we looking at here?
Well, I've packed a pretty big bag, and I know that my colleagues and I are ready to do everything we can to fight for all of our constituents, regardless of party, to make sure they have a voice in the next election, which won't be possible if Donald Trump and Greg Abbott pass these rigged maps. We're trying to take this one session at a time. The special session that's been called to pass these new maps lasts for 2 more weeks. And so once we get to the end of that special, those maps will be dead. The governor, of course, has the ability to call another special session if he chooses. We're not sure if he will, but if we get to that point, we're going to assess our options and see what tools we have to continue fighting for our constituents. But at least for now, we are all committed to staying out and killing these maps in this special session.
Is there a limit to how many special sessions he can call?
I think the only thing that limits it is the calendar. They're 30 days at a time. And at a certain point, given that we're talking about elections, there are deadlines that have to be met. The ballots have to be printed. There has to be a filing period. We have to have a primary. So, it's not forever, but it could certainly be a long period of time if the governor decides to keep calling specials. I'm hopeful, Brian, that if blue state governors promise retaliation, that may, scare Texas Republicans, maybe even national Republicans, and maybe they'll walk us back from the brink. I don't think any of us want gerrymandered maps in every state, but Democrats also can't unilaterally disarm. And I think those governors in blue states are willing to do what they have to prevent Texas from going through with this power grab.
And I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But just so that I understand a little bit of what we're talking about, technically speaking,
Yeah.
what is the rough cutoff that you're looking at in terms of when ballots have to be printed? When those, like, what is the safe point at which you can return without having to worry about new maps being passed because deadlines have to be hit so that again ballots can be printed and candidates can start running for office?
It's hard to tell because there are ways that the governor or the legislature could delay primaries, but let's set that aside for now. The primaries in Texas are pretty early compared to the rest of the nation. They're in March of the election year, so March, beginning of March of 2026, and so the filing for those offices opens up in November of the off year 2025, and the deadline to file is in December of 2025, and so you start to get to a point later this year where those deadlines are piling up and it's no longer possible to have the regularly scheduled primary. We'll see, what happens at that point. Again, we're trying to take this one session at a time before we start forecasting what Republicans may do after this special.
I'm sure that you've spoken about that date with your colleagues. Is that something that folks have at least contended with the prospect of staying out of state until that deadline?
We've certainly, talked about hypotheticals, but it's difficult because we're not sure how Republicans are going to react. We're not sure how blue state governors are going to react. All of that would change what the deadlines look like. But we certainly have entertained some of those hypotheticals. But really, we're making decisions, one special session at a time, because that's what's in our control. It's what we know for sure, and that's the only thing we can really plan around.
Can you talk a little bit about the financials of this? I mean, can you talk about your salary as a Texas state representative, the fine that you and all of your colleagues are incurring per day, and like what the math looks like here?
Well, it's not much of a salary. As a state representative, I get paid about $600 a month before taxes. And so that's not much to live off of. And so many of my colleagues, including myself, we have day jobs that help us pay the bills. And by breaking quorum, we are leaving those day jobs behind. We are sacrificing the income that we need to make ends meet. I also have colleagues who are leaving behind young children. I have some colleagues who are leaving behind aging parents. So this decision was not made lightly. It's a cost to all of us, a financial, a professional, a political, a personal cost to do something like this. But we all feel so strongly that this power grab is so brazen, so egregious, so dangerous for the future of our republic that we had no other choice but to make this stand. And I hope what it does is I hope it inspires not just all Texans, but all Americans to step up and do something to stop this power grab from happening. Whether you're in a red state or a blue state, there is always something that we can do to stand up to the president and ensure that we have free and fair elections in 2026.
And I would normally wait till the end to do this, but just I want to jump in right now and say for anybody looking to donate to this effort, you can go to riggedredistricting.com, and there is a link there to donate. This way you can help out all of these Texas legislators who deserve it, who are showing more courage and more spine than most politicians on both sides of the aisle in the country these days.
Brian, if I just wanted to thank you for that. There are a lot of media figures like yourself who are covering this, and that's great. Very few of them are going the extra step to organize people to support our efforts, and it means the world to all of us. And I'm sure I've told you this before, but we consider you an honorary Texan around here, and appreciate it very much.
I appreciate that. I'm going to put an image on the screen right here from Dustin Burrows, who is the Speaker of the Texas State House, and he said the Texas House will be convening at 3:00 p.m. tomorrow, and that is, of course, on Monday. If a quorum is not present then, to borrow the recent talking points from some of my Democrat colleagues, all options will be on the table. So can you offer some insight into what you imagine the Texas Republicans might try to do? Because again, if this is a conference that is willing to go to the mat to put forward rigged maps to further entrench their own power in stark defiance of course, the norms, but just democratic ideals, then clearly these are not people who are too beholden to the very concept of fairness. And so is there any indication as to what he may do while you all are out of town?
And I'll add, it's not just a violation of norms. It's not only a violation of our ideals. It's also a violation of the law
Yeah.
of the Voting Rights Act, which, by the way, was made possible by a Texas Democrat, Lyndon Johnson. And so we have a heritage as Texas Democrats to protect, one that we're very proud of. It's not just the Voting Rights Act. It's also Medicaid and Medicare, some of the healthcare programs that people rely on that Donald Trump is gutting. And those things were started by Texas Democrats. And so we are fighting for all of this. And it's why we feel so strongly about it. You know, I've seen the speaker, I've seen the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, I've seen the governor, Greg Abbott, put out these statements where they act pretty tough. But when Donald Trump comes calling, all they can do is bend the knee. All they can do is bend over. And I think it's telling that these Republicans act, so tough and strong on social media. But when Donald Trump says jump, they ask how high. And so I'd love to see that same strength, that same fortitude when these Republicans have to stand up to the president. There was a time when I was growing up in Texas where a Texas governor would tell a president not to mess with Texas. But Dustin Burrows and Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott, they are welcoming Donald Trump to mess with Texas in all kinds of ways, and it's unacceptable. And I think they should certainly be ashamed of themselves.
Jumping back into what he threatened specifically, do you have any indication, any idea of what they may be looking to do?
I don't try to spend too much time in their heads. It's a scary place to be. But
Yeah.
I know that they've talked about these fines. They've talked about trying to expel us from office. I think I speak for all of my colleagues when I say we're not too concerned about the personal or political costs. This is a lot bigger than us. This is about whether or not we will have free and fair elections in 2026. This is about whether or not politicians should fear the voters, whether there should be accountability for their actions. I mean, the president is wrecking the economy, starting wars, protecting pedophiles. He's kicking millions of Texans and millions of Americans off their health care to fund tax breaks for billionaires. He should face consequences at the ballot box for those actions. That is how a democracy is supposed to work. But by trying to rig the election, by trying to redraw these maps in the middle of the decade, they are disrupting the democratic process. And so I'm not just fighting for Democrats, I am fighting for independents and Republicans too, because every Texan, every American deserves a voice at the ballot box. That's how this democracy, how this republic is supposed to work. And we are ready to pay whatever fines, we're ready to pay whatever cost to stand up for our Constitution. And I think that's exactly what our constituents expect of us.
It's so clear how all of these Republicans are so willing, so eager to capitulate to Trump so that they can get a little pat on the head from the God King. But is there any sense from your conversations with your Republican colleagues prior to you leaving the state whether they really had the appetite to go through with this?
Yeah, I've had lots of conversations with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and many of them thought this was a bad idea. They heard from their Republican congressional members that didn't want their districts cut so thin. And so I know that they don't want to go through with this, but again, they lack that moral courage. They lack that fortitude to stand up to the president of the United States, the leader of their party. And that's a real problem because Texans should be showing courage and backbone in this moment, especially the leaders of our state. And I think it's a real shame that these Texas leaders are cowering at the feet of Donald Trump at such a critical moment for this country.
Now let's go to what we can do to retaliate, to push back. And I'm very glad that you said that we cannot unilaterally disarm because like I've been beating this drum for a long time about this idea that in the Republicans' ideal world, every single state is gerrymandered to within an inch of its life. But when Democrats have full control, when we have our ideal situation, we have these independent redistricting commissions that are put in place. And I understand why they were done, in hopes of some elusive reciprocation from Republicans that, of course, never arrived. And so now we're in a situation where we have effectively unilaterally disarmed because we have all of these states that are weapons for Democrats, California, New York, where we have these independent redistricting commissions, and they're to some degree fair maps. And yet, if you look at the big states on the Republican side, Texas is already gerrymandered. This would be a deeper gerrymander. Florida, which of course Ron DeSantis further gerrymandered in this last election cycle. So again, when they have the opportunity to gerrymander, they do. When Democrats have the opportunity to gerrymander, they put it in the hands of independent redistricting commissions. And so now, given that we're in a situation where we can either, stand atop our moral mountain, relegated to the permanent minority, or we can actually fight back, what's your message to these governors who, I don't think it's J.B. Pritzker. I don't think it's Gavin Newsom, but some other folks who might have the opportunity to do so and might be waffling in terms of whether they have the courage right now to actually fight fire with fire and go to the mat for this thing?
Well, I hope Texas Democrats are showing these blue state Democrats how to have a backbone, how to have a spine, how to meet this historic moment. We're in the minority in Texas, but we are still using every single tool in our toolbox, including this quorum break, to fight for our constituents and honestly to fight for all Americans, people who aren't even our constituents, but who will be affected if Donald Trump is able to rig the next election and maintain his majority in Congress. But I also just want to say that I am proud to be a part of a party that still has principles, that still has a vision for this country beyond a descending spiral of partisanship. And I do believe that every single state should have a citizen-led independent redistricting commission. Politicians shouldn't be drawing their own lines. It's a conflict of interest. Politicians shouldn't be choosing their voters. Voters should be choosing their politicians. That is the vision, and we shouldn't lose sight of that vision. When you stand up to bullies, it's pretty easy to become a bully yourself. And so I'm glad that we have this moral clarity about where we're headed. But as we said, that can't be possible if we are unilaterally disarming, if we are allowing Republicans to run all over us and rig the next election. So we have to be firm, we have to be strong while still maintaining that clarity of vision where we're trying to head in the future. The goal here is to stand up to these Republicans, have some mutually assured destruction so that hopefully we can all walk back from the brink. And maybe we can even pass my bill in Texas to create a citizen-led independent redistricting commission in Texas, because that's the goal, is for every state to have fair maps
Right.
and free elections.
I know that your colleagues in Texas have spoken to governors across the country. Have you gotten assurances from these Democratic governors that they are indeed bought in, committed here, and are going to, do their part in this whole process while you all are leaving your jobs, your security, your family, your financial stability to go live in a hotel in Chicago? Did you get assurances from these folks that they're going to uphold their end of the bargains here?
I mean, we've had very encouraging conversations with some of these blue state governors who I think have recognized the moment that we're in and the necessity to fight back and to stand up to these bullies. But we've got to hold their feet to the fire. And so if you are a voter in one of these blue states with a Democratic governor, and particularly if you have a Democratic trifecta, I hope you are calling your state reps, your state senators, your governor to tell them that they need to meet the moment, that we need to push back against what's happening in Texas. That's the only way that I can fight for my constituents in the Lone Star State, is if I have backup across the country. We need that. Otherwise, Donald Trump is going to rig this election. He's going to protect his majority. And God knows what happens in 2028 when he doesn't want to leave office if there is not a Congress that's going to hold him accountable. We desperately need checks and balances back in our government like the founders intended. And right now, we don't have that. We have Donald Trump who can tell Republicans what to do and when to do it with no pushback. That's not how a government is supposed to work. We need a balance of power. We need checks and balances. We need accountability. We're never going to get that if Republicans pass this rigged map in Texas.
All right, so three things here. One, for everybody watching, if you live in some of these Democratic trifectas, we're talking New Jersey, New York, Maryland, California, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, make sure to call your elected officials. Make sure to tweet at or post to your elected officials. Make sure that they know that the pressure is on them to do something here to, again, meet the moment with the same urgency as these Texas Democrats right now. The second thing, again, for folks who are looking to donate, you can go to riggedredistricting.com. There's a donate button. These folks make $600 a month. That's $7,200 a year. They're getting fined $500 per day. In just 2 weeks, they will be fined more than their annual salaries for their job. So if you have the opportunity to donate and help them, that will be a great resource to be able to do that. And finally, James, to you and your colleagues, I know that the next days, weeks, and possibly months are going to suck, and you'll be away from your families, and you'll be getting fined on a daily basis, and you'll be making negative money while you're doing it, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on you. And I know that the news cycle moves quickly, and the country might not even be looking at this on a daily basis, although I'll do everything that I can to make sure that we are. But insofar as it matters at all, I know that on behalf of me and the folks who are watching right now, all the courage and motivation and inspiration in the world for you all to keep going, and that we are out here thinking of you in what are going to be very unglamorous positions here, and unglamorous situations here for where you're staying. So thank you all for what you're doing. Thank you for putting, your time and your money and your safety on the line, and really showing up in a way that Texas Democrats so often do, to stand up even from the minority and do what you can to fight back.
Well, those words mean a lot to me, and your actions mean a lot to all of us, Brian. You're someone who always puts their money where their mouth is, and supports us when we do this work. And I should say, money's not just going to help support us as individuals. It's going to pay for, lodging and food and all the things that you don't think about when you go on a trip, especially when you have, 57 legislators who are now going to need to eat, every day. And so all the help people can give is going to be much appreciated. I just want to say we're here in Illinois, the land of Lincoln. I'm not sure if you know this, Brian, but Abraham Lincoln, when he was a state senator in 1840, broke quorum by jumping out of a window in the Illinois State House.
Yeah.
And so I say that because I do believe my colleagues and I are participating in a very long American tradition of standing up to bullies, of civil disobedience, of good trouble. And it's our deep honor to do so.
Well, perfectly put, as always. James, I appreciate what you and all of your colleagues are doing, and thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks, Brian.